Welcome to the After Dark podcast, the podcast in which Anthony leads his unknowing friend Konrad by the hand through TV shows. Will Konrad like them? Will Konrad hate them? Will Konrad predict what's going to happen, or will he be lost in the dark? Find out now, only on the After Dark podcast.
Hello, and welcome to the After Dark podcast. I'm Anthony James, and that's Konrad.
Hello.
Hey Konrad, how are you today?
I'm very well. We're recording on a Friday, so I've got that Friday feeling, and I'm dancing on the proverbial ceiling, which in this case is talking about the 08.
Ceiling.
Bit of Lionel.
Oh, yeah.
Bit of Lionel to start the weekend right.
Straight into a story, right? My wife had a friend in, I don't know if they're very good friends, but a colleague in one of her jobs in the film industry who told her that he did an art degree, and as his final project, he wore a blindfold and for like 10 hours with Hello on Lionel Richie's Hello on repeat. Okay. He sculpted in a public space. He sculpted out of clay with a blindfold on Lionel Richie's head over and over again out of clay. That was his final piece. Did
he ever make a good version of Lionel Richie's head? Because that seems like the kind of thing.
I think he did all right. Like, this is an art. Like, he's his final art thing. He probably had a lot of practice. I will also. I'm going to ask my wife about it, and I'll try, guys. If I remember, I'll put a link to it in the description. Like, he's got a video of him sculpting Lionel Richie's head. Anyway, Lionel Richie segue over. How else you been?
Yeah, not bad. Apart from that, I haven't really got anything to top that story. To be honest, it's been a fairly plain week. Certainly no art installations immortalizing. I don't even know what you call Lionel Richie. He's not really Motown. Pop. Let's say pop. Sure, pop. Yeah. Immortalizing pop stars of the 80s in clay or any other material for that matter. So yeah, it's been a fairly mundane week. What about yours?
I'm doing all right. First week of pupils back in school is down. I'm feeling very, very tired, but I'm getting there. I'm looking forward to talking about the OA because this is
week's episode.
This is an episode which actually you probably were happy enough to have an extra couple of days because I think our listeners know we record on Wednesday usually. So a couple of days more to theorize, to think about the episode. Probably wasn't a bad thing this week, let's be honest.
Yeah, I mean, there was some stuff that I could do with some distance from, because certainly, I don't want to put the cart before the horse here, but by the end of this episode, I was sort of like...
Drink.
I let it
That's the After Dark podcast drinking game. Cart before the horse. Drink.
Cart before the horse, there you go. If you've got that on your bingo card, scratch that off. Yeah, I kind of just it went to autoplay on Netflix, and I was like, stop, I don't want to see the next one. And then I just had to sit in silence for like 30 seconds, just be like, what the fuck just happened there?
Yeah.
So, we'll get into it. I'm sure.
I want to get into it. So I will say, if you are new to the show, subscribe on YouTube on the Culture Cave or at audio apps if that's how you prefer to listen to your podcast. That's what we're doing. Yep. Email us at adpodmail@gmail.com if you would like to get in contact. If you have a question for Konrad, you can get us through there, or you can leave a comment underneath this video. If you would like to help out the channel, you can either leave us a tip, which we hardly ever ask for, but it comes to my head here, so I may as well say there's a link to give us tips in the description. Or if you want to have something, you can get not this t-shirt. This is not ours, but this comes from Redbubble. This HG Townhouse t-shirt I'm wearing, and so does ours. So the link to our Redbubble store is in the description, and you can get our t-shirt. As well as that, join the Discord. Lots of dark, OA, Sisyphus, new South Korean show. Mental, off the wall, pretty good. Is all that discussions in the Discord. Join there. Apart from that, I think we are ready. Give us a like to get into it. Konrad, what do you think?
Let's do it. Don't know why I'm saluting for that. Let's do it.
Oh, let's break it. Damn!
Magic mirror on the wall. Konrad won't know. Give me an episode of the OA. Second weirdest dream or vision.
Is this the best OA episode of them all? Have we already had the weirdest? Just so I know that I'm setting out my... Okay, fine.
No, I'm not going to tell you when it is, but you'll know it when you see it.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that we weren't classing the opening dream with Kareem longboarding off a cliff. Yeah, because I was like, that's not that weird.
It's not...
Yeah, so this is kind of like a bit of a kind of like, one day my prince will come, sort of like introduction with fucking Finding Prairie / wait, is it Cinderella? No, I think it's Sleeping Beauty who's in like the glass case in the woods, right? And the prince comes and wakes her up. It's been a long time since I've seen Sleeping Beauty.
Snow White?
No,
Sleeping
it could
Beauty,
be. It could be Snow White. It's one of Snow White.
Cinderella
or
isn't
Sleeping Beauty.
asleep, but there is Snow White is asleep at a certain point, and so is Sleeping Beauty.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's in the name, the Sleeping Beauty. So, like, it's one of those. But I got vibes from that. I will also say as well, actually, this episode was called Syzygy, and there is an X-Files episode entitled that, which is about two girls who like basically develop telekinetic powers when the planets align in a certain way. So I was like, holy shit, what's happening in this episode? It doesn't quite work out as a sort of 1-for-1 analog, but I was very excited when I saw the title of this.
Yeah, excellent. When you saw the title of this, did you say Three Wise Men?
I didn't, to be honest. It took me like I was pretty late in crossing the finishing line on that. I think I got there just before Kareem, but only just like literally about like 10 seconds before. I was like, "There's three Y's," but it was you know, there was a nose in it, if anything. No,
I think that was a pretty good clue. Like once you realize what it's about, it's like, oh, actually, that's pretty good.
Yeah, that's great. That's like, it's like a cryptic crossword, which I will readily admit I can't do cryptic crosswords. So
I've always wanted to get in, but it's just something that I think that is the learning curve on a cryptic crossword is too high. The learning curve.
Yeah, it's just I mean, I just don't understand it. And like I'll look at a clue and it'll be like a haberdasher's nose, and the answer is like communist Russia. And then you talk to someone about how they arrive at that, and they're like, "Oh, you just have to like understand the code of the clues."
Okay, so if you really do want to crack the cryptic crosswords, check out the YouTube channel Cracking the Cryptic. They actually show you how to solve them.
Oh, okay,
all right.
Excellent.
Yeah, it's weird. Anyway, so there's like a vision here with young Nina and old Prairie.
I actually thought it was Rachel at first. I will admit, when I first looked at the, because like her face is kind of obscured a bit. So when I first saw her, I was like, "Oh, is that Rachel?" But then it becomes quite clear that it's not Rachel.
What, in the box? You mean?
Yeah, in the box.
Yeah, like even rewatching it, I kind of feel it was Rachel. And
she definitely seemed like she had dark hair, right?
And then changed to Prairie at the very end. You know what I mean? Like I think
that's interesting, because that's
how I
read
it.
That was literally my interpretation of it. Like I first saw it and I was like, well, that person has black hair, so that's not Nina. And then they get a bit closer, the face is distorted by like the kind of water effect or whatever it's supposed to be, and I was like, okay, that looks like Rachel. And then at the end, obviously, end of the scene, the character wakes up and starts banging, and they've got blue eyes, and it's like, okay, well, that's not Rachel then, that must be Nina, and it's just a weird effect on the hair. But yeah, that was absolutely my read of it as well.
Well, I actually personally, I might be showing my ignorance here, but I kind of think that we saw the transition from the sort of think it's Rachel but not sure face into Prairie's face. I think it actually changed, although I might be wrong. I might have just taken that from it because that's what my mind was telling me. Yeah. But yeah, so anyway, interesting dream. What do you think it means?
I mean, it seems like a kind of confirmation that Nina is in there somewhere, and would like to get out.
Yeah. So do you inside the body still? So are you sort of abandoning your idea now that Nina went into Prairie in the other world? Or is it just like you jump into someone and then you're both in there?
Yeah, I think this dream to me seems like a pretty firm confirmation that two people can be in the same body at the same time, and that is what is occurring with Nina and Prairie.
Yeah, and it's also, as we talked about before, been hinted at with the Russian dolls, for example.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. Actually, I hadn't kind of put that together, but yeah, that is absolutely, in retrospect, quite a clear metaphor for what's going on here.
Yep. Okay. Cool. So next up, it comes out and Prairie is telling Homer, or Dr. Roberts, I suppose, if we want to differentiate who's the alpha within his mind at the minute. So Prairie is sort of telling about the dream, and they mentioned a few details here which I thought were interesting. One of the details is that they have a conversation about was it childhood Nina or was it childhood Prairie? And Prairie was really clocked on here because she straight away went, well, it was both of us because it was before the bus crash, you know?
Yeah.
It was before we split, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and I really like how she has her, not her story because she's telling the truth, but there are like no holes in what she's saying here, and you can tell that Homer is still, even though he's beginning to question his relationship with Hap at this point in the series, and even more so as the episode goes on, he's still approaching what she's saying to him very skeptically, and yet she is just able to be like, every time he has like a question or potentially can poke a hole in something, she's like, no, no, this is how, and it just comes back with a perfect answer. It's like, she's got you, Homer.
Yeah,
she's got you right where she wants you.
Yeah, I enjoy that as well. What do you think about the fact? Now, this is something that's, I'm going to be honest, this is my third rewatch of this now. I think third or fourth. I'm not sure. I've watched it a lot of times. Actually, no, it is my fourth, because remember I told you that when I got to a certain point a few weeks ago, I had to go and finish the whole series again.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, this is my fourth watch of the show, and I must say that something that's striking me more and more each time, the first time I watched it, I didn't really take much note of it. Prairie really does seem to not care, at the minute anyway, about Nina. She doesn't care that she has just come into this woman's body and she has sort of taken over her body. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think I go back to kind of what I said about Prairie as a character. I think it might have even been after the first episode, or certainly early on in the first season, where I think she has an extreme amount of empathy, but there is also a kind of distance and an almost lack of it's weird for someone who's very empathetic to say this about someone who's very empathetic, but there's almost a lack of humanity to her in some cases. So if she is also capable of just being very, very distant from something that she is doing that is potentially hurtful. So a good example is her relationship with Nancy and Abel, where she didn't really seem to appreciate how much she was hurting them by keeping them on the outside. She did eventually. She came round to it, but her return from her kidnapping in the first season was very much about her and what she needed to do to fix things, and she never really thought about kind of helping her step parents adjust to her returning. And I think this is a similar situation as that, where Nina's in there and Prairie is actually mentioning her by name. She's not even kind of forgetting that she's in there. She knows she has inhabited this other person's body, and she doesn't really seem to care, which I think is another example of that complexity to Prairie's character, where she is actually capable of being, I'm not going to say selfish, but very self-centered.
Yeah. When
the ends justify the means, as far as her mission is concerned.
Yeah, it's really interesting to me. It strikes as somewhat childlike, and I think possibly there is something that the show's doing in terms of having the OA grow. Now, we're probably never going to see this come to full fruition, but if you were to look into child psychology, like Jean Piaget, he talks about the idea of being egocentric. Like the egocentrism is rife within a child up to a certain age, and then you start to sort of take it to the accounts of other. So in my mind, when I see a character acting like this way, I think to myself, oh, they're actually having her be childlike. They're having her almost grow and mature as the show goes on, and maybe she would have come into a full empathy state in the last series or whatever. But even in the first season, you're right in the Abel and Nancy stuff. Whenever French was in the car with her, she almost didn't even second guess the fact that them adopting her was 100% selfish on their part. Like she didn't really even give them credit for rescuing her from a brothel. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's played very believably by Britt Marling as well. Like, it never feels out of character for her, which is an achievement, because, as I say, I think Prairie's two defining characteristics, if we were to boil it down to that, would be her extreme empathy and her force of will. So for someone to be able to be capable of extreme examples of extreme empathy while also being quite egocentric at other times, as a hard balancing act to strike for an actress, and I think she manages it really well.
Yeah, I agree. One or two things more in this scene before we move on. It is quite a meaty one. So Rachel has been moved to another facility, apparently, on the legal documents.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's not.
That seems legit.
Another facility being a ditch in the ground where she was burned.
Yeah, which is going to be burned. Yeah. Homer. I don't even think Homer buys that at this point. I think he knows that something weird has gone on. And again, Prairie's asking the questions that are just shattering Homer's his belief in Hap's goodness, I guess. Saying, why did he stop her talking to us? Why has she suddenly been moved to another facility once she learned how to communicate? And
also the door. Talking about the door in the room,
and confirmation, I believe, that Homer doesn't know what's in there, so he's not as complicit in. Not that it was ever suggested he was, but it's kind of confirmation that he's not as complicit in Hap's schemes as he could have been. Also, a lot of attention on Prairie's arms, which will come back a bit later in the episode.
I told you that. Now, I didn't say you wouldn't predict it, and we'll get into the whole discussion of whether you did or not later, because I've got some thoughts about that.
Yeah.
But basically, I said to you that when it's revealed where those scars on the arms come from, I couldn't overhype it, and I honestly don't think I can. It's what we're going to talk about it a lot later, but it's one of my favorite moments from any TV show ever. Basically,
There's things to say. There's things to say about that. the whole syzygy section of this episode.
All right, we'll get there when we get there. So, Hap, we just get a small little shot. Probably not much to say about it, but Hap is taking Rachel out of the thing. He's speaking to himself, and he says, speaking of Rachel, I suppose, dead Rachel, and says, "This is Prairie's fault."
Yeah, I wonder how I was wondering when he said this, how you felt about this, because to me this was a rare moment of bad writing for Hap's character, because I was a bit like, it just felt a bit on the nose. Like, I know you're selfish and you deflect blame, and I just don't know who this character is saying this to. It just seems a bit like, we get it. You know, you could have not said anything in this scene, and it would have been implied because we know enough about this character at this point.
It struck me, I'm watching a lot of the show Last Man on Earth with Will Forte at the minute, and very good comedy if you want to watch it on Amazon Prime, but because he's Last Man on Earth, they fall it, like, they don't, well, it's a comedy show, so they get away with it, but he has, like, you know, balls with faces on it that he talks to, because he needs to have someone there to put the dialogue out to, otherwise why is he talking, you know? So when he's doing that, I felt that this was sort of using Rachel's dead body as a means to get dialogue out, but in a show like this, it doesn't play the same as it would like in a comedy. It does not. It doesn't. It's not. You don't buy it really. You know.
Yeah, I think it's just because his sentiment is one that he's expressed exactly the same way in far more believable circumstances as well. So to me, I don't think we really learned anything about Hap's character by hearing him once again shift the blame onto Prairie for something that clearly isn't Prairie's fault. So I could have probably done without that, but to be honest, it's a very short scene. It's a very minor criticism ultimately.
Yeah. Okay. So Kareem gets to the Treasure Island Mental Asylum, or whatever you want to call it, private mental clinic or whatever, and he goes up and asks what to see Nina. They say no, you can't. He says, "Well, I'm going to call the police. I'm looking for a missing child," and he gets to go in. He gets to the break room, and an escapist ensues eventually.
I mean, I didn't see. I figured that these two characters that Kareem Washington was going to be the one to get Prairie out of Treasure Island. I didn't think it was going to happen in literally the same scene that they meet each other. And I will say for Kingsley Ben-Adir and Britt Marling, excellent chemistry between them. As an actor and actress, I was really immediately on board with their relationship. And to be honest, although this was proven wrong by the end of the episode, I was like, "Oh, sparks are flying here, guys. Could this be competition for Homer, perhaps?" And then by the end of the episode, I was like, "Okay, I think their relationship might be slightly different than what I thought." Although, you know, I've watched plenty of Game of Thrones, so who knows? But I also really enjoyed that the Prairie kind of displays her more scheming side of her character in this scene, because she's kind of playing Kareem Washington here. Like, she's kind of offering him things that she's promising him things that she doesn't actually know that she can deliver. So, you know, and he buys it hook, line and sinker and gets her out, goes out swinging as well.
Yeah, it does. And that was an interesting part of her character. Like, she really, in this escape, and then later on also in the coffee shop scene, she seems to be growing in confidence. You know, and like, maybe it's a more sort of maturing out of that childlike state again. She's growing in more confidence, and it's interesting. Like, you see her attitude changing.
I felt quite bad for Lionel in this scene as well. That did make me laugh out loud. It's like the opening of this scene where they sit down together, where Lionel's told off by the nurse for breaking something, and then she just dashes a vase against the wall, and the nurse is like, "Lionel!" again. And it's just like, poor Lionel. And one other thing to mention for the long-time listeners: we have a yellow raincoat. I repeat. I know it's Kareem Washington's, but our protagonist is in a yellow raincoat. Emergency stations, as far as I'm concerned.
The loop is complete.
Yeah.
So basically, There's one more thing. She also mentioned now. This sort of, I think this is like, if there's a time in the show where sort of like a show puts across their like deepest ideal, you know, and they give it in like a little throwaway line, but it's like, oh, I actually think that's really central to the show, and that was, I'm not mentally ill, but I do think logic is overrated.
Yeah.
That's very
it's a great line.
Central to this show, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, so they escape. Prairie
swears for the first time. Yeah, she's never driven before, and I don't think we've heard her swear in this show before. And we get, I believe she says shit, or might have been fuck. It's definitely one of the two.
In the car. Yeah.
When she's trying to drive this car.
Well, she's never driven because she was blind most of her life.
That's true. It's a fair point. Yeah.
It's like whenever she wrote that letter and you were like, well, a couple of spelling mistakes there.
Yeah, no, I was like, all right, okay, thinking back on it, that's a very cruel thing for me to say about a girl who was blind at the time.
And say what you want about Kareem Washington having this like standout car. Jeez, the person could go and find it when they need to escape. That's the thing. If he had like a normal car, like a black, I don't know,
it's a Prius,
whatever,
and then just like, oh well, I'm gonna be here all day, guys.
yeah, just holding the keys up, clicking the button, trying to find it. All right, so we move on then. Hap is at the bottom of a pool. We don't know this yet, but this is the beginning of a little arc, which I'm sure we're going to get an old classic After Dark podcast, points for Konrad, because there was something happen in this episode which you predicted 100% just last episode.
Yeah. So, I was quite pleased with myself on this one.
Yeah, so he's at the bottom of the ocean. No, he's not. The bottom of it's like an ocean. His mind is an ocean.
Yeah.
He's at the bottom of the pool. It's the only place the tinnitus sort of goes down a little bit.
But correct me if I'm wrong, but we have heard. I've got in my head that we have heard someone say that tinnitus is a result of traveling prior to this episode. I can't remember who said it, but I feel like
I'm pretty sure we knew that he had tinnitus. Or maybe not. Maybe we just heard that was a result. Yeah. But he's got it. There's another woman, a French woman at the bottom. Elodie, I think her name is. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce it. And she is Elodie.
I would say Elodie, but
Elodie. So she's at the bottom as well of the pool as well, and then later on they go into the sauna together. Now it's pretty clear straight away that she knows that he's a traveler too. And he's immediately like, hang on, what the fuck? Like, this is mental. How do you know? You know? And they have a little conversation about it. What do you think about this character being introduced?
I think. Well, I mean, my immediate thoughts are, what is this character's motivation in seeking out Hap specifically? They're very guarded, or well, maybe guarded isn't the right word, because they don't seem defensive, but I think they're very good about directing the kind of indulging Hap's own kind of egotistical nature by getting him to talk about himself a lot, and Elodie has answered questions about herself, but kind of in quite a roundabout way, without really giving anything away about what she's here for or why. She's basically just telling Hap, there's other ways to travel throughout this episode, and kind of explaining the nature of traveling. But I don't think this character is here to help Hap. That's my read on this character at the moment.
Okay, awesome. I'm just smiling because after I watched this episode, I went and immediately watched the next one.
Okay.
I'm smiling at the end of the next episode. Sorry, just don't bother me. Don't mind me.
Okay.
It's a really cool moment. Can't wait for you to see it, Konrad.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. So there was one thing that was interesting, is that they could hear each other's ringing, and that to me sort of, it added an extra mystical factor to the tinnitus. So it's not our world's tinnitus.
It's like it's kind of that idea of like resonating on a frequency that other people who haven't traveled can't hear is what that kind of puts me in mind of. And once you've heard the sound that associated with traveling, you can hear it in others, essentially.
Yeah. Okay. So they go to get some pancakes. Kareem and Prairie. Well, so that's what I would do after being locked up for a few weeks. I'd go get some pancakes.
I really wanted some pancakes after this scene. I was like, that looked good, and it infuriated me that they left without finishing them.
I know what's going on.
Finish your dinner, guys, or breakfast, I guess.
Too much control on those people. That's what I'll say.
Yeah.
Okay, so we got some background on the house. It was built in 1910. An engineer was the one who bought it.
His wife was a medium.
Wife was a medium. Yeah. Sorry, it was built. The engineer got built. I think. I think it was built in 1910. And 2 years before the events of this season, that's when Nina bought it. It's only sort of fairly recent. So yeah, there's a secret entrance, which Kareem shows the map and says, "Where's the secret entrance?" Prairie has a little bit of a.
She does a bit like, you know, when you get asked to do something that you are absolutely not competent enough to do, and in your head you're like, shit, well, I've got to at least give this a try. And it's just like, yeah, and you like look at it, she's like essentially looking at this complex schematic that she doesn't even know how to read, and like in the hopes that she sees something that he hasn't seen. It's like, yeah, you're not going to get it, Prairie. Like, just admit you've lied to him and you don't really know how to help him.
There it is.
There it is. That thing.
Yeah. So, was there anything in this scene in particular? This is sort of them catching up on each other's stories sort of thing. Is there anything in particular you wanted to mention?
So there's two things really for me. Probably the biggest kind of plot development, I guess, is that Hap was Ruskin's therapist, so that's where their prior relationship comes from. And the other one to me isn't really a plot development, but Michelle gets mentioned again, obviously, and you know, Michelle is the driving force behind Kareem's plot up until this point. But it kind of made me think. It made me start wondering what has actually happened to Michelle. It made me wonder whether she's turning up at some point soon, or whether her absence is just going to be something that runs throughout the entire season. I'm still not sure where I land on that, but it's just notable to me that we don't seem any closer to actually finding Michelle, because the investigation for these two has, to a certain extent, kind of moved beyond finding a little girl now. It's now far bigger than Michelle. So I'm interested to see how they tie Michelle's disappearance back into their wider investigation now.
Yeah, and obviously Prairie says that, like, you know, reminds her of a young man from Michigan.
Yeah.
And I think that she doesn't. I think she concludes, in my read of it anyway, as at this moment, she concludes that that's not Buck. That's not the same. You know, that is Michelle. That's not Buck. It's interesting. I don't think that Prairie's making any. I don't believe the show's making a comment there that this is a different person to Buck inherently. You know, just in an overall thing, I think Prairie just thinks it's not the same person. And the reason I say that is because the show wouldn't make a point like that, because I know that the actor Ian Alexander, who plays Buck and Michelle, has said before that in his mind, Michelle is just a pre-transition version of Buck. He doesn't view Michelle as non-trans in his mind.
Yeah, and I think that's my read of it as well.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. So so Hap being the therapist of Ruskin is an interesting point. So we'll see how that develops as we go. Next up, we have Homer ringing up Hap with some bad news.
Yeah.
She's gone. The apple of Hap's eye has fallen out of the tree, is gone.
Yeah, and Hap, it's always good, because we haven't really seen Hap get very much comeuppance, to be honest. So it's always nice to see him kind of scrambling to try and fix a crisis. And this is a pretty big one, to be honest, that he's having to fix here. This kind of jumps forward a little bit, but the moment where he says to Homer that he needs to tell the police that Prairie is a danger to herself and others, interspersed with the flashback to him burning Rachel's body, is like a really, really graphic image that stuck with me, of just like, oh god, you are a piece of shit, Hap. It definitely worked on me in terms of eliciting the reaction I suspect they wanted to elicit.
Yeah, like my mind always goes back to the moment he asked Prairie to run away with him, and I'm just like, mate, you're evil. Like, what?
Yeah, you're a monster.
He's like, we'll continue the work. It's like, you're burning women in a ditch in the forest. Like,
yeah, yeah. And like, how are you still justifying this to yourself? And it's, you know, it's that it's how a lot of people kind of describe individuals arriving at monstrous behavior. You know, like when often, I don't want to say often, but it's sometimes someone will do something monstrous and you don't see the thousands of little steps towards that conclusion that they've taken. and you know, this is just the latest. Obviously, it's a big step forward here, but Hap has been edging towards this kind of awful behavior for the entire show, and now he's here and he's burning women's bodies in the woods, as you say.
Yeah, it's the same thing with anything in life. Whenever someone comes out and does something and it's very shocking, and it seems like, you know, well, that led to it, and that led to it, and that led to it. Hang on, but that's only a tiny thing. How did that lead to it? Well, it's like putting marbles in a jar. You know, some things that you do, put 5 marbles in a jar. Some things you do, put 1 marble in a jar. But when that jar's full, those marbles are going to start spilling out, and some people are going to get killed. Like, that's basically what's happening. All right, so Homer is getting very frustrated in this therapy session with Scott.
Yeah, lovely to hear a bit of Scott monologue here. I very much enjoyed Scott getting a bit of dialogue.
Yeah, no, I enjoyed it as well, and I love the way he's speaking. Like, Scott's not getting angry. He's just like saying, he's talking to Homer as if this Homer is literally got amnesia, and he's just like, well, you were there, like, you know, come on.
He describes Homer as Homer from the real world, I guess, as an Orshocks football quarterback as well, which I was like, that's a great description of Homer. I felt that was very appropriate for what his character was like in the original world.
Yeah, I love the transition of Scott's relationship with Prairie too, because he's just like, you know, she's got a plan, like she'll be back, you know, I'm confident of that, and I love that aspect of Scott's character. I think Scott, he was up there with Steve, wasn't he? Right
up there. Like, he was a real piece of shit, utterly cynical, just without any kind of positive thoughts in his head. And you know, this Scott is a far cry from that. You know, he has, dare I say it, faith in Prairie, or the OA as he calls her, to figure it out and save them, which is nothing like what the original Scott would have ever had.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Kareem and Prairie go to, or OA, I suppose I should say, go to Nina's apartment, because they notice on the keypad is the same in the pictures as her place as it was at Curie. So they go there, they figure out. Kareem tells a story, which I'm sure straight away you were like, he's talking about himself, isn't he?
Yeah, I was, to be honest. And that was another one of those ones where I was like, I don't know if I'm going to give myself points for that, because it was like confirmed like literally 10 minutes later, and it was pretty obviously about himself, I think, as well.
Yeah, I actually found that very interesting that they did confirm that later, because I was like, it was obvious that he was talking about himself to me, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whenever a character starts talking about something, their brother or someone they knew, or, you know, it's always about them. That's just literally a writing technique. So I like that they did, though, and this was confirmation to me. Nina is in there somewhere, because as he was saying the thing, he just turned around and went, "What's the number?" And she just knew it. 10-15-87. Now 10-15-87 would be, what, 30 years? What date is that? Is it a date? Is my question first? Because I'll be 15th of October 87.
It could, yeah. I suppose it could, in theory. Be
Maybe I'm leading you down a theory here where I shouldn't even have said. Is it a date?
I mean, I honestly didn't think about it, but I mean that could conceivably be Nina's date of birth. You know, she'd have been about in her early 30s at that point.
Was she 30 when she came back from Hap's dungeon? Potentially. I think that might. She was close to it anyway, because it was 2016 in the year, so definitely would have been close to it, I think. So maybe. I think maybe. So that could be it.
I honestly didn't think about it that much, though, to be honest. I probably should have. But I mean, I have a weird relationship with things like that, because like at the very beginning of this episode, where we get, you know, another one of those kaleidoscopic images, and this one was of like a plane kind of kaleidoscoping into I can't remember what it kaleidoscopes into, actually, but I was like, that ties into like the plane that Kareem got the flight number for in the Q Symphony game, and so I'm spotting stuff like that. But then when someone literally says, here's a number that seems a lot like a date, I'm just like, whatever.
No, I think we know from our dark days that there's certain things which you just like, okay, that's fine, which is absolutely fine. There's a moment later in this episode which I'm really interested to hear your take on it, because in my mind I'm like, I'm pretty sure Konrad would have assumed this because his head is so much in theory mode that he's overlooking a simple detail, and I'm waiting to see what you think of that.
Oh, okay, fascinating. Let's see what happens.
Yeah. Okay, so they listened to some tapes.
Very graphic tapes. Good lord.
Yeah. The first tape is Paris, 18th of September 2009. Any historians in the place want to know? A month before I met my wife. So that is actually
unrelated.
It's unrelated, but at the same time, a month before that, there was this strange, I don't even know what to call it, going on with Prairie, and we can assume now some sort of octopus.
Some kind of thing with lots of tongue, like...
that's the thing. I'm jumping ahead here. I'm taking analysis away from you. Sorry, Konrad. But in my mind, it's like that was like a huge thing. Like she was dreaming of like having tongues in her in a way that was kind of like the octopus's.
And honestly, at this point, I wasn't thinking octopus, even though I'd kind of made that prediction of Hap like taking some interdimensional sea creature and storing it in his big room. I think at this point I was just like, well, this is just a weird dream. I don't know. Like I'm sure that this will come back in some way, but I don't know what way. And as it turned out, it was a lot more literal than I expected, to be honest.
Yeah, and we also get the three wise men.
Yes, very good
conclusion, which we've talked about a little bit already, and that let them know that they have to go to syzygy to find the door. So that was good. That led us to the next part. It's nice to see a plot point being revealed, not through a strange hookups aunt, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes it's nice when your main characters are just kind of competent and figure stuff out on their own.
Okay, so Homer, he goes and goes on to Tinder, and he actually rejects he rejects one of his colleagues, the woman with the red hair. So he rejects her, and then he accepts another one. And I just want to say, see this little text conversation that takes place while on the phone. Geez, Homer seems a bit smooth here. He's a bit of a smoothie.
Just straight in. I mean, I've never used a dating app in my life. I've unfortunately never had the need to. But like, I was like, is this how you just start conversations with someone who's like a complete stranger? Just like, oh, I've had a shit day. Like, okay, just straight into this then. And then Homer, seizing on the opportunity, classic joke. The woman whose name we'll learn is Yassi. She jokes about turning up in red vinyl, and Homer, quick as a flash, like, I'll be wearing red vinyl too. Great joke. Well done, Homer. And a missed opportunity, because if he had turned up in red vinyl, that would have been a great way to double down on the joke. But unfortunately, didn't happen.
That would have been a moment of comedy genius if they.
I like Homer as a character. I don't think that level of comedy's in his wheelhouse, to be honest. Like
that level, as if that's like the highbrow comedy. Like, that's not in his wheel. Yeah,
that's the peak. You don't get better than that.
No, exactly. Okay. I think it would be pretty strange. Oh no, hang on. In my mind, I pictured him in a red vinyl dress, and I'm thinking, in a show that's so, respectful of trans rights and trans issues, it'd be really, really weird if they just had someone showing up as a joke in a dress.
Yeah, that they kind of went down.
It's funny because I'm wearing a dress.
Yeah, that 80s comedy route, like, it's a man in a dress. So yeah, in retrospect, perhaps for the best that Homer didn't.
Vinyl jacket, vinyl tie.
I mean, he could have worn like that red vinyl suit that Eddie Murphy wore on like a bunch of his comedy tours in the 80s.
Yeah, and that red vinyl suit, I don't know if you knew this, but that is the reason why Eddie Murphy didn't steal Richard Pryor's jokes. Because he changed it, Konrad. He changed what he was wearing. Okay, so Kareem and Prairie ring syzygy.
Yeah.
Thought it was... Did Prairie, like, not... They've listened to the tapes. Like, surely she realized that there's a Russian accent here before they rang. Like, I would have been like, wait, we can't ring. I don't have a Russian accent. Like,
I feel like they play pretty fast and loose with her having a Russian accent in this. To a certain extent, I don't know how. I'm not going to say it's not believable, because my suspicion is that the people who are in charge of syzygy don't care they're aware that something has happened to Nina, and they don't care because she's still.
Once she arrives, they're like, well, that is her. If she wants to talk in another accent, that's all right. They're not thinking there's someone in her from another dimension.
Yeah. Well, and perhaps some of them are even aware that this is possible based on what old Asriel is revealing, like the level of details that Asriel's revealing. But I got immediate as soon as they had this conversation on the phone, where it's this deep voiced man talking vaguely about equipment, and it will take some time to get ready, and when would you like to come in. I got immediate like secret society eyes wide shut vibes where like, oh, this is going to be some like masked ball sex cult stuff that she's going to, and I wasn't a million miles away, to be honest, with that.
There was definitely aspects of something like that going on. Definitely.
Yeah.
Sort of reminded me a little bit like I've been watching. I've not quite finished because I just really don't want to finish it. But Babylon Berlin, I've got like 2 episodes to go of season 3, and I just really don't want to have finished it. I don't want to have seen it all.
Yeah.
So we've been delaying watching the last 2. But it reminds me of sort of 20s Berlin, like this
Like
almost.
hedonism.
Yeah, like sort of off the chain. Actually, in season 3 of Babylon Berlin, they've even got like a proper satanist, like a proper sort of
excellent.
like thing going down that route as well. So sort of these behind the curtain parties going on all over the place. It's really good. Okay, so let me think. They talk about having the equipment ready. Like, I don't think we really need to delve too much into what you were thinking at that moment, but maybe just very shortly, when they explain like we'll have the equipment ready, the drive will be there, and like sort of what was your thought of what they were going to have for her to do?
So I think I imagined her being in some kind of chair, because that seems like what you do with someone who's like a subject of something. I definitely didn't envisage it being no, I guess I did envisage it being a sort of public thing, because I had that like eyes wide shut image in my head of like a kind of secret society of people in masks all gathered round. It didn't involve an octopus, I'll tell you that much, for nothing at this point. And I don't need. I mean, I guess I was figuring. I was imagining that it was probably going to have something to do with dreams, because obviously they've just recorded or listened to a bunch of recordings of her essentially vocalizing dreams that she has had.
Yeah.
So maybe I guess I was imagining it being like some kind of deep dream study where maybe she is able to stay in some kind of half waking state and like communicate what she is dreaming, and the dreams are a reflection of some kind of aspect of reality or something. I think that's probably where my head was going with this.
Yeah. Maybe you were thinking also maybe like a little bit of a furtherance of the Curie dream project that's going on as well. Yeah. Just involved in that. Okay, so then we get Hap and Elodie having dinner, and there's a lot in this. But I will say, first of all, let's have the conversation. You did get a prediction right. You predicted that there was going to be someone introduced who knew more about the traveling and was able to give information to characters.
Yeah.
I think. What did you think about seeing this, and what do you think about that decision?
I mean, I was quite pleased, obviously, that it came right, and I think from a kind of narrative structure standpoint, it makes sense. We needed a character to give our protagonists, or antagonists for that matter in this case, information, because the only one who was able to really impart knowledge was Katoon before this, and Katoon hasn't played a major part in this series up until this point, and I think Elodie was is well performed. Like, I think she's a really interesting character, very mysterious. I don't know what her motivations are, and I loved the moment where like Hap tries to talk to her on a level and be like, oh, you just do the movements and then you travel, and Elodie just laughs at him, just like he's some fucking redneck who travels in the most like mundane pedestrian way. Like the movements are like the interdimensional equivalent of like taking the bus or something. It's like, oh, that's how you travel, is it? It's just you're an embarrassment.
No, the interdimensional equivalent of like a red pickup,
yeah, exactly, like the lowest common denominator. There's nothing you've done nothing impressive, whereas Elodie is like cruising around in like her own supercar, essentially,
like a Tesla, like
yeah, like a Tesla. Yeah.
Okay, so there's a couple of stuff here that I'll just like sort of plow out at you and see what you think. So you can control where you go kind of like you can influence and plan where to go.
Yeah.
Which sort of there. So she also went into a lot of her own backstory where she talked about finding herself in a dimension where she was an actress, and she found it overwhelming because everyone knew her, and she was watching the films of her being as an actress, and she watched herself live all these different lives, obviously analogous to what is actually happening with a lot of the characters as well in the show. What do you think about this little story she told?
I mean, I think it's just it to me is, as you say, like kind of a metaphor for how she came to be comfortable with being at home as a traveler without a home, so to speak, a home dimension, so to speak. Because although the other travelers we know have done it once, none of them seem to really be confident in like what they're doing or how they're going to do it, or what the future holds for them. And indeed, some of the characters who we've met, who I guess we suspect are traveling, even if we don't know it for certain, like the kids in the greenhouse, it's actually driving them insane. So I think this is maybe offered as a counterbalance to these characters we see going insane, to say there are individuals out there who have the force of will and, you know, the mental fortitude to deal with this. Although honestly, with what we've seen so far, I'm not 100% convinced that Elodie is even human. Like I don't take it. Oh, I'm not going to say she's not human, but I don't take it as written that she is human. I think it would be foolish at this point to be like, after what we see in this episode, to be like, well, obviously they're all humans. It's just like, well, I mean, there's a psychic octopus in this episode, guys. So like, I feel like we have
to bear that in mind. Yeah, you have to bear that in mind. I will say that there was a moment, and I am going to mention it because we are only 4 episodes away from the end of this, and there is no answers, you know, to the big questions because we do have it cancelled. So I will point you in this direction just to get more discussion from you, maybe in this episode or in the future. But Hap realizes something while she's talking, and then after that, later in the episode, I don't know if you connected these two things, but I kind of want to lead you down this road. In a way, it's not a road. It's actually not even a road to lead down because we do have the conversation later on with with Homer and Scott anyway. But what I mean is, the realization he comes to basically leads to him telling Homer to go to work and to go and talk to Scott about his NDE again.
Oh, okay. So I wrote down here, not certain what Hap has just realised during this conversation.
Well, I don't know. It hasn't been revealed what he's realised, but he has basically.
But that's
just
what's driven him to phone Homer to say go back to work.
That's how I read it.
We don't know. I'm trying to think. Has Scott actually at this point in the first season or in this one, has he revealed anything about his NDE? I don't know if we've really heard anything about it.
Not sure that we know the details.
But I mean, to me, the obvious link there is with, I don't know, maybe traveling without movements. That seems like something that would really stand out to Hap. But yeah, that definitely struck me, and my first response to it was like, oh, something's going on here. Hap's figured something out. And again, anytime this character imparts information to him, in my head, I was like, okay, so Elodie's just done that deliberately to send him down a certain direction. I feel like she's giving him all the information that she wants him to have so that he will do things that she wants him to do, and I don't think he realizes he's being manipulated as much as he is. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. The last thing she mentions that there's fuel, can't explain it but can show you.
I don't know what that's gonna be. Like, the fuel is.
Well, they mention it later on when they're in the opera.
Did they mention the? I don't remember seeing what the fuel was actually revealed as in the opera.
So we can just skip forward and do that now, I suppose. There was a little bit of trickery going on, trying to imply that Elodie and Hap would be in the audience to Prairie.
I 100% fell for that. I was like, what is going on here? And then it's like, okay, no, fine, yep.
Yeah, okay, so basically when they're sitting in the opera, that she's talking about, it's basically will. You need to will yourself.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I did write that down. I didn't necessarily make the connection that was like the literal fuel so much as, I guess, the way that you direct where you end up, because I believe Homer at the end of that
We've
scene
been told,
is like,
yes, yeah.
she like willed herself towards Prairie willed herself towards Homer.
That's what he realized. Hap realized, but I think that Elodie was sort of. She said that it was like, I don't know, it was like not quite will, but it's like the best sort of explanation or whatever.
Yeah,
that because the idea that she said, I don't know, I'm gonna show you what the fuel is that when she went to the opera, it's like she went to show the feeling that the fuel is, but the best that they could do was to call it will, even though they. So okay, so Homer's on a date.
Yeah. I'm just gonna say something right off the bat here, right?
She's like a lovely girl.
She does.
Lovely woman, sorry.
This character of Yassi, I am putting squarely into the same bracket as the baller from early in the series, where it's like, awfully convenient that Homer is going on a date with someone who is professionally obsessed with death and is proposing the idea of extending life through maintaining people's thoughts in AI and machines. So I was just like, what's this character's motivation? And maybe it's
I was thinking. I'm going to be honest with you, Konrad. All I was thinking is this character of Yassi. I was wondering when the reveal would come that they are actually called Alexandi. That's what I was wondering.
Wait, hold on. I don't understand that joke. Oh, okay. Wait, yeah, now I get it. I've arrived at the joke, ladies and gentlemen. No need to write in. I figured it out. Maybe it's a middle name. Yeah,
Yassi Alexandi. So, all right. The people who are just listening for the OA have no idea what we're talking about.
Apologise to everyone new to the show. Ignore that and move on.
Yeah.
Or listen to the entirety of our Dark Run. That'll explain it.
Yeah, exactly. Having said that, actually, we do need to mention Hap's earphones at some point in this episode, just to remind you.
Yes.
Okay, the saliva-covered earphones. Okay, so they talk about like unconsciousness as being uploaded into the cloud. He tells the story of Prairie. It's on Netflix, so they get the little Stranger Things upside down reference in too.
Yeah, that was a weird moment. That I was like, oh, okay. I didn't have much of a reaction to it, but it was a bit like, oh, okay, that's an odd thing to reference.
Yeah, and then while he's talking about like the story of his NDE that Prairie is trying to convince him is real, he holds up like an oyster or whatever he's got. Like
he fucks this up so badly,
and he chokes on it. And in my mind, I'm like, that's a physical feeling that is similar to what the Homer has had before.
Yeah,
there was maybe a moment where he was like, hang on. He's like, it's like he had deja vu.
Yeah, that's absolutely my read of it. I think his body kind of was momentarily taken over by the original Homer due to the reminiscence of the NDE experience in swallowing that oyster. But sure does fuck his date up. So, like he like I love the way that he tells his story. He's kind of looking all cocky, swallows this oyster, and then immediately just starts choking. It's like, yeah, you balls this.
Yeah, and also the whole discussion about the who pays and stuff. So
that was painful to watch. That really was.
Like he said he'd pay. He was like, you owe this, you owe this. It's again something that I've not really had to worry about. My wife and I have been together for so long that we kind of have always just shared money. Like from the age of like 19, I need 20 quid. So it's not something that I've really had to worry about. But at the same time, I'm like, I can see what he's doing. And then it's funny because he was saying I'll pay because I had more. It was almost like she was a little insulted. Yeah. Because she was like, well, why I can split it, I do want to say a little sidebar in terms of splitting the bill. There was one time when Emer and I went to a wedding, and before we went to the wedding, we were in. It was in Cambridge, so everything was quite expensive. And we were in Cambridge in like having lunch with a load of people who were also going to the wedding. There was about 12 people, and Emer and I at the time were students, and we didn't have any money. We were living in London. In a shoebox flat, like literal shoebox flat with no money, and we went to this thing with like 12 people, and these were all working professionals, like late 20s, like what I am now, right? So they were all working professionals in Cambridge. Some of them were quite well off, and Eber and I split like a sandwich platter that was like £17 because we were like, right, okay, let's split a sandwich platter, £17. That's $8.50 each. That's good. We can afford to get drunk later at the wedding, right? But then they were drinking they were all drinking cocktails. Yeah. They were having like their own
some
mains.
Kir Royale on the go.
Some of them had a starter, this woman who I hadn't met before, she eventually seemed to be quite lovely, but after the food, she leaned across the table and she goes, looks at everyone and goes, split the bill? And I'm like, literally, I was like, what do I say?
Yeah.
And it got to the point where it had been all tallied out, and everyone would have owed like £35 each.
Yeah.
And I honestly, I was like so proud of myself. I was like, no, we're not splitting the bill. We're gonna pay for our own. We only had a sandwich platter, $8.50 each.
Yeah.
No, and I was like, and I walked out of there like, fucking king dick. Like I was. I thought,
I mean, that is the. If you're in the dating if you're in the dating game now, God go with you, because I don't know how those conversations go anymore. It's like, I don't know. Should we just run out on the bill? That would be my suggestion. Make the evening interesting.
Jeez, I remember one time we were driving through my dad's hometown, and he pointed at a Chinese restaurant and said, "Ran out of there, skipped the bill on there when I was 17." I was like,
just a litany of crime scenes pointed out.
Yeah, exactly. All right, okay. So the OA is practicing her accent. She's finally realized that she needs an accent.
She's not. She's kind of like, "Hello, I am the OA." Like it's very kind of James Bond in the '60s style Russian accent.
She's doing a good job of being bad at an accent, but I will say, I know we're going to get comments. Perhaps we already have a comment. For some reason, I think the Russian accent is one that no matter what film it's in, even if someone's doing a perfect Russian accent, people are going to be like, "That's a bit over the top, isn't it?"
Yeah. I mean, maybe it's just one of those accents that lends itself to that. But I think that's probably, it's the same as when someone does like a really posh English accent in like a World War II movie. You get like Michael Myers. I always get them mixed up. Which one's the comedian?
Mike Myers, he's not the murderer.
Yeah, well, that we know of. Mike Myers, like in Inglourious Bastards, where he shows up, he's like, "Hello," and it's like, you listen to that and you're like, this is a ridiculous accent. People talk like that, all right? I've been to school with people who talk like that, so I'm sure there are people in Russia who are just like, "Hello, Mr. Bond," and like, have this, or like this what would seems like a very stereotypical accent.
Yeah, I was watching a podcast the other day with a fella. I don't even know who he is, like, to be honest with you, but he was being interviewed about his time at Harrow School, which is like one of the Eton, Harrow School, the real posh ones, and he was like he was like, he was pretty posh, wasn't the most posh. And he was like people think it was like, really posh because like, we were all come from these backgrounds, but let me tell you, it was just like any other school. And I was just like, fuck off, no it wasn't.
As someone who was like privately educated for a couple of years and in state school for the rest of his life, it is not the same. I'll tell you that much right now.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so date didn't go well. She doesn't want to come back. He wanted to go.
Doesn't want to go to the park and look at constellations.
No, not her bag, baby. To get back to Mike Myers.
Honestly, not a bad suggestion though. I was like, that's actually not a bad idea. Going and sitting in the park and looking at constellations through an app on the phone. That sounds all right, frankly.
Yeah, I think that she maybe got a bit of a. Obviously, like, she doesn't need a reason not to want to go with him. Like, let's be honest. But I think she sort of maybe got a little inkling in it that maybe he actually did have feelings for this patient of his, and he's like got his own. She would be like the other woman to the patient,
Yeah. I mean, he seems to struggle to stop talking about her. Let's be honest.
Yeah. Okay. So he's happy enough to then go and go to Scott because he was like looking for any excuse. When Hap calls him, he's like, "Yeah, I'm happy to work tonight. That'll be great." So he goes to interview Scott, which we'll catch up with later. We're at syzygy there now, though. The back room
nightclub
behind like a sewing shop. There's like a nightclub going on, and the party's booming. The party is booming.
It's going great, yeah.
Prairie's drinking White Russians.
Yeah, I was thinking, is that a White Russian? Because that's quite funny.
You know what? It's either a White Russian or it's one of those huge fucking egg drinks that she had at the start of season 1.
God, I hope it's not one of those. I've forgotten all about those egg drinks. That is just... imagine asking a bartender for that.
Yeah, have you got 12 eggs handy?
Yeah, I'll have 20 eggs in a glass, my good man. With some cream or whatever it was she added to it.
Oh, God. Right, okay, so she goes in. Kareem says, right, I'm off. I'm going to go and sleuth about. And Prairie gets taken away into a back room. She gets put in a chair. Although there was a moment where there was like a blind choir.
Yeah,
in
the group of blind kids just singing in front of a screen projected with like what is clearly just water, but which I think is also very clearly designed to evoke memories of that top-down shot of the boat where Prairie first entered Nina's body. That was I think my interpretation of that is it's just the show purely dealing in metaphor at this point and symbolism rather than it necessarily being plot critical, but very cool. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, you know, I like those little sort of arty, as you say, metaphor moments in the show for certain. But so takes her into a room, straps her in a chair.
Yep.
Says, if you need out, tell us. You know, give us the safe word.
Tell us the safe word. It reminded me a lot of, is it Eurotrip, where one of the characters goes to a brothel
Xena
in the
Warrior
Netherlands.
Princess.
Yeah, run by Lucy Lawless, and she gives him a safe word that's like this impossible to pronounce like Dutch word. It very much reminded me of that.
Yeah, Eurotrip. Jeez. Did you know Eurotrip was actually written by 3 of the Seinfeld writers?
Oh wow, that's a step down for them.
Yeah, exactly. But Michelle Trachtenberg is no longer Harriet the Spy. That's a coming out movie. Okay. Right. Okay. We've got the scene where she then is revealed to, and I don't know how to state this with enough emphasis here, Konrad.
Well, I mean, I like. Can I? I'll have a go. I can have a go.
You have a go. Yeah, you have a go.
Well, okay, so I'll take you through because I was basically like doing a play-by-play of these scenes because it's kind of cutting to some extent back and forth between Hap and Elodie and syzygy. So Prairie is restrained, lots of focus on her arm marks, and then I love the transition of the audience that Hap and Elodie are in to the audience watching Prairie because, as you said. It 100% worked on me. In my mind, I was like, wait, are they about to see Prairie be revealed on stage? And then the next thing I wrote in all capital letters was fucking octopus thing. And then, so does Hap have one of these too? Because obviously he's got the room, which to me, I can't imagine he's like loaning out his octopus to a Russian nightclub. So to me, he has one as well. And then my second point on this was, and this is not true, but it was my first thought. Is that octopus voiced by fucking Ken Watanabe? Like it isn't. It's a guy called Eijiro Ozaki, but it sounded a lot like Ken Watanabe.
I love the choice.
Oh, it's great. So yeah,
I think actually this show actually is giving a it's giving a light to the Asian population in San Francisco, and I love that even to the point where the octopus is an elderly Asian man. I love that. I love that choice.
It really worked. There was a lot of presence in the voice, but yeah, I mean, basically as soon as this character, so I've played a lot of the video game series Diablo, so as soon as this character revealed that its name was Azrael, I was like, that's the Angel of Death. And then it also named itself as Old Knight, which I was just like, that's a great name for it. There's so much going on in this scene, like so much is revealed through this conversation.
Right, so I don't know if we're going to do it the whole way through, but I've actually written down everything he said.
Okay.
Because I had no idea how to pick it apart without doing that, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to start reading it, and we can stop and have a chat about it.
Sure.
I'm not going to understate this. This is one of my favorite moments from any TV show ever. Like,
yeah,
I mean, this was amazing.
Even as someone who like kind of predicted that Hap had a crazy kind of interdimensional sea creature in his room, this completely caught me off guard because I didn't think it was going to turn up in a vat on stage like it's in the fucking Prestige, and like it was going to do a water escape.
Before we do that, then let's talk about this. So obviously we don't know what is in Hap's room. You're assuming it is another one of these. Okay, that's fine. I think that's a fair assumption to make at this point. But I just want to say, I am really conflicted on say if there's no one in Hap's room, right? Let's just talk about this one. If we're talking about a matrix, a theory matrix right at this moment, I'm really conflicted on whether this is the point for you. Because I'm going to be honest, it's kind of like hearing the noise of a car in a show and saying, Michael Schumacher's turned up. And then he does. It's like, did you predict it? Or did you just have a stupid fucking idea that the creators of the show also had?
It is like, because I mean, like, if I'm being honest with myself, when you see Rachel run into that room and you see the reflections on her, like on the wall behind her, and you see her face, it's like, well, something's really bad is in that pool. So there's going to be some ghastly, like, interdimensional creature in it. And then and I was just like, well, it's in water, so it's going to be fish. But you are right. Like, there was no. It was very much a fire from the hip theory, that one, and I didn't to be in. Not to do myself out of a point, but I think I mentioned it might be an octopus a couple of times, but I did also mention, like, it was broadly
Giant
just going to be
squid.
some squid or sea creature or something. But at the same time, when this octopus turns up, I was very much thinking, well, that's a point for me.
I will say, and I'm not gonna, like, obviously I did that for comedy, the whole Michael Schumacher thing. If it does end up that there is an octopus as well in Hap's room, you're getting the point for that. I just will say, because obviously. Like, I was talking to Emer about that. I was like, what the hell do we do with this? Because obviously, there's something in the presentation of this show that put the image in your mind, you know?
Yeah, I guess, like, because I actually said, like, the markings on Prairie's arm are obviously, like, sucker marks. I think at the time I said
Now
they were like binary or something like that, which is obviously completely wrong. But yeah, in retrospect, they're obviously sucker marks, and I there must be something else that put that in my head. I don't know what it was, to be honest. I can't from my kind of the forefront of my brain, I can't conjure anything to say, oh, this led me down that path. It was just water. Rachel's expression was horrified, like horrific sea creatures, and then maybe there was some imagery that I had like internalized that pointed me at that, but. We ended up at it anyway,
well,
and
it's there.
Yeah, and it is a hell of a scene. I agree with you. So I mean, yeah, let's go through it. Let's see what let's see what we can pluck from this scene.
From Old Night. So I love the name too. Yeah. I agree with you. It's a great name. So connects to the arms and says, "Greet them. They love to hear. They love Nina here. Tell them not to be afraid." So she says, "I'm," and then he says, "I am Azrael, but Nina calls me Old Night."
Yeah, I don't know what to make of that. Just to say immediately, I don't know. I've got no theories about that except to say that's if that's just kind of fleshing out the relationship of the characters, that's very cool.
Yeah, well, I kind of read it like maybe that he hasn't revealed that he is Azrael because of the meaning in that name. He hasn't revealed that to Nina, but he will reveal it to OA.
Oh, yeah, okay, that's a good point. Yeah.
Okay, so will you translate for me? My brothers and sisters in the sea think communicating with your kind is a waste of time, but I hold hope for your species. Nina has been my medium to connect him to you. But tonight, we cannot have the performance as usual. Tonight, I have the rare opportunity to converse with the OA. And he makes her say it. There's a bit of hesitation in her there.
Yeah, so he knows who she is. And my understanding of this, that those past few sentences is, the implication is that all octopuses are capable of psychic communication.
It does seem that way.
Which is great. I love it. It's very kind of. Is it Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy where it's like dolphins? It's either dolphins or mice. I can't remember in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. But there's like basically a fairly innocuous creature on Earth that it turns out is actually running things, and is like this sentient intergalactic traveler species. And that very much put me in mind of that.
It kind of also reminds me of Philip Pullman. Like the idea of like just the bears are another civilization. You know?
Yeah.
Okay, so say it loud for him to hear you. Tell him who you really are. She's like, no, I have something to. So basically, he's trying to get her to say it so that Kareem can hear her say, "I'm the OA," as if that will spark something in him to realize something. I have something to show you, something which will help you solve your mystery and resolve and revive, basically get the others, rescue the others. But I can only be honest with you if you are honest with them. Tell them who you are. Tell them you're an angel. And then what I found was really interesting, and I really feel this is a statement that the show is making. She didn't say I'm an angel. She said I'm an interdimensional traveler.
Yeah.
So I think that's the show telling us. Those two words are interchangeable now.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think this idea that they've made a very clear case for toying with kind of Judeo-Christian religious imagery, but blending it with their own brand of sci-fi. So it goes all the way back to Cartoon with their wings, and the use of the word angel, but they've very explicitly stepped back from going too far down that path, because I think they didn't want to run the risk of confusing people into thinking this was going to be a specifically religious thing, when it's very much its own thing. And yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I think that moment there is them saying angel is just another term for whatever these beings are that can do this, and you know, it kind of puts you back in mind of that. I can't remember who it was who said it, that famous sci-fi quote where any technology suitably advanced is indistinguishable from magic, and that's kind of what we're getting here. Like, religion sprung forth from people interacting with these individuals at a time when they couldn't even begin to, I mean, we still can't begin to explain it, but they were even less equipped to explain it, so they were just agents of God at that point. But yeah, it's a great little moment to really hammer down what the show is doing.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. So all that goes on to say, doesn't that feel better? After she says, I'm an interdimensional traveler. Then he says, lying ages you, and time is already not on your side in every dimension.
Yeah.
She's quite young. What does he mean by that?
So, I've got some thoughts about this. I think this series is going to end with her dying, because Azrael seems to know her past and present and future. He seems to have an insight into what who she is, and he knows things that he has no right to know, obviously, in her being the OA and everything like that, and he seems to have some inkling of what her future holds. I don't want to say the lines before you get to it, but to me that is suggesting that Prairie, or that the OA, will not live very long, and so needs to complete her mission, whatever her mission is, quite quickly.
Yep. Okay. Awesome. In the future, you don't know who you are. You forget your true nature. I want to basically, I can't read my own writing here. Well, I want to take you there. Show you. I want to show you the moment, and where you can take you to the moment where you can show yourself your true face.
Yeah.
Your pure being. And basically, and then it'll reawaken your mission.
Yeah.
So, what do you take from that? Like, I want to show you your true face in this moment, so you can be reawakened and continue your true mission.
Well, so obviously she's having an NDE. That's the plan. Is she she's going to be given another NDE? So she's going to reveal her pure being. So I guess my interpretation of that is maybe that she's going to appear to herself in this NDE. As we've kind of discussed with Homer's NDE dimension, how Homer from the real world kind of manifested in this alt world and had his NDE experience, though perhaps not as Homer. I guess maybe that's happening with Prairie as well, where through this NDE she will manifest in her NDE dimension and will be able to speak to herself and reawaken herself in that dimension to who she is and what her mission is. But
yeah, okay. So
yeah.
I it's interesting because to do that, he said he must to send her into this NDE. He says he has to kill her for 37 seconds.
Yeah.
You are no stranger to death, but I taste the fear in your sweat. I love that callback to the dream from earlier.
Yeah. It's a great reminder. Like just a little confirmation as well that was what was happening to Nina in that Paris dream.
Yep, exactly. And then I love this part. I cannot proceed without your consent. And basically she says, "Do I survive?" And then he says, "That's up to him, your brother."
Yeah.
She's like, "I don't have a brother," and he said, "In every dimension, she sent him to protect you."
Yeah. So sounds like Katoon is their mother, and Kareem and Prairie might be brother and sister, based on that.
In every dimension. Any theories coming out of that?
Well, I don't know. I've kind of toyed around with this idea of there being some kind of God is missing situation going on here. I know I've said that we've just talked about how they've kind of gotten themselves away from the Judeo-Christian mythology, but that still to me sounds like the implication of something that sits above dimensional travel, in the position that would be occupied by like a deity. So, you know, maybe that is saying Khatun is God, as like not in a kind of strictly religious sense, but kind of occupies that position, and Prairie and Kareem are you know the related to a god. I guess that's like what it's saying, but it's so broad at this point that it's just like, what does this mean? I it's really hard with this because obviously I try not to come at it from this perspective, but with 4 episodes left, it's sort of like there's no way they're resolving this in 4 episodes. So I have to try and pick out the stuff that I think will realistically be resolved.
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna say this. What I was driving at there is I was kind of trying to make you make a prediction. And
about like what the every dimension means, or
do you like? So we've seen 2 dimensions so far. Yeah. Well, we've seen 3 actually, but we're not counting the Saturn one. So my question to you is, in the Crestwood dimension, where, well, obviously Crestwood exists in both, but you know what I mean. In the Crestwood dimension, have we seen her brother in that dimension?
Yeah, that's a boy, but she's the same. So I guess that's like I know what you mean, and that I did have that same thought, but because she is the same across dimensions, or she looks the same, I should say, across dimensions, I would expect Kareem to also look the same across dimensions. So I guess the answer would be no. We haven't met Kareem in the Crestwood dimension yet. Although, I mean, if it was revealed that someone else was like the manifestation of Kareem, I'm trying to think, because like, I mean, obviously the characters in the Crestwood dimension who seem to have more knowledge than they should of Prairie's situation is pretty short. It's basically I've forgotten his name now, Ilias, and I'm trying to think if anyone else does now off the top of my head. I think it's just Ilias, really, that we know that she hasn't told. And Ilias, to me, doesn't strike me as being particularly I was going to say doesn't strike me as being particularly interested in Prairie's well-being, but that's not strictly true. He has seemed interested in it, but when speaking to her, but then the things he's done when not speaking to her seem almost nefarious. So I don't know if I would buy that Ilias is kind of a manifestation of Kareem in the Crestwood dimension.
It's interesting to me that your mind is going that Ilias would be a manifestation of Kareem, whereas if it was Ilias, why is Kareem? Could you not view it as like the brother, whoever the brother is, whatever being or whatever the brother is could possibly be manifesting within both Ilias and Kareem? So it's not that Kareem is the brother; it's what's manifesting within both is the brother.
I suppose it could be that. I think the thing that's confusing me is just physical appearance. It's that Prairie is the same, like appears the same across both worlds or both dimensions. So
I think my answer to I know what you mean, but I think my answer to that would be, well, if we're going down this route, that they could be different, right? Because obviously we know that a lot of things haven't been answered. I'm not going to tell you what is answered and what's not, but obviously we know there's going to be a lot left on the table for discussion at the end when we finish this. But I will just say, I don't believe, or maybe we'll open up discussion to my own mind now. But the way I would view it is the reason why the brother doesn't look the same, if you're going down that theory route, is because Prairie actually traveled dimension by doing the movements, by moving dimension like anyone else could, even someone who's not as special as her. Like we saw Homer's moved, Renata's moved. Like, so she went the traditional way to do it. Whereas this brother is being sent by whoever she is. Yeah. Like they mentioned she. So the brother's being sent. And that would allude to me that the brother isn't going by the traditional traveling method.
That's a good point, actually. And Elodie has said as much herself as well, which actually makes me think.
I'm just gonna say, when I saw this episode, I assumed it was Ilias.
Yeah, I think I would probably, now that we've talked about it, I think I probably would agree with you. I think Ilias is. It would be weird for them to say in every dimension your brother is there to save you, and for there not to be an analog for Kareem in the first dimension. And Ilias certainly has been up to some very, very suspicious stuff that implies he knows more than he's let on. So yeah, I could buy Ilias. The thing that's actually interested me talking about this as well is that when they said she, my mind went to Katoon. But this conversation about the idea that your physical manifestation is not necessarily the same across dimensions makes me wonder about Elodie and who that is. Because you've got this character who's also, female, is a very experienced traveler, appears to possess a lot of the same skills that her brother presumably possesses in terms of being able to travel freely between dimensions, and they are guiding someone, or perhaps a better way of describing it would be manipulating someone who is actively harming Prairie. So I don't know, maybe Elodie is like Katoon, like just in another body. Like I don't know. I think that could potentially work.
Yeah, it could potentially work. I will say as well, like there's one thing as well when I watched this episode for the first time, which I thought, this idea of sending the brother, and I honestly thought to myself, right, okay, so Kareem, obviously we agree Kareem is the brother in this dimension, and then I thought to myself, right, okay, maybe Ilias, and then I was thinking to myself, how is Kareem the brother? Like, how has he been sent? And then I was like, oh, okay. This is what I realized when I first watched it. Oh, he's having vision style dreams. Perhaps that's what they mean. Perhaps these dreams that are being given to Kareem is the brother's influence in Kareem. Like, that's what I was sort of going down the road.
Yeah, I think that makes sense as well, because Kareem certainly isn't consciously aware of his connection to Prairie, and I wonder whether Ilias is to us. I wonder to what extent Ilias is as well, if that were to turn out to be correct. I wonder if he is driven by dreams, or like with Ilias, based on what we talked about. I think it was in the last episode where he said in his clinic, there's like Rachel is written on the wall in Braille. That to me implies that his kind of experiences with this idea of traveling are more lucid than Kareem's, whereas Kareem's is just, he has a weird dream that kind of guides him, but he doesn't really understand it, and he wakes up. Whereas Ilias, if it does turn out to be the case, is the manifestation of the brother in the Crestwood dimension. Seems to know a bit more about it. But yeah, there is so goddamn much in this scene that you can pull apart, and I really hope some of it gets resolved, because it is a staggering amount of writing that went into this, and it's all brilliant.
Yep. So the last thing that happens is he actually kills her. I love the crescendo moment of her saying out loud to everyone, "Old Knight, you have my permission to kill me." Yeah. I love that line. So he says, "You have 37 seconds. I will count them for you." And then he starts counting, counting backwards. She wakes up in a plain bathroom. She goes out into the thing. It's a really interesting decision what they've done
to film it on like the shitty handheld camera for this.
Yeah.
I do you want to know my theory for this?
Okay.
So I like this is the one, I'm going to be honest here, listeners. This is the one time I've ever done this. I went and looked up the significance of the plane number that was used in the Q Symphony game, and it sounds like it was based on, I believe it was something Britt Marling has said. It was a flight that she herself was on. And I think it was a flight from somewhere to San Francisco or like Hollywood or something. And my interpretation of this scene and the deliberate shift from using traditional shooting equipment to shooting this in this grainy, shitty handheld camera is her implying that herself in the real world is who Prairie is visiting. That's the dimension that Prairie is visiting here.
and just like the handheld camera, how crap it was, made you think that was the case.
Yeah, just like this feels like it's supposed to be
interesting.
kind of like a found footage, real world kind of thing that you're going for here, and the fact that the plane number there's been a reference to a plane number that Britt Marling herself travelled on, and now Prairie is travelling into a plane, makes me think, okay, this is that flight. And this is kind of a very meta moment where Britt Marling is like, I'm in this as myself. But that's a really out there theory based on one bit of information that I've managed to scrounge up off of Reddit. So I don't know how realistic or truthful or how accurate that information is. But that was my as soon as I saw the handheld camera, as what you know from Dark, when the camera changes, I'm like, all right. There's been a decision made
There's
here.
a reason for it. Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. That's why I was asking. That's really interesting. Well, obviously, that's a fucking huge theory.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to the end of this season where Britt Marling just like walks out on stage with like a coffee. It's like, hello, friends. And it just says, it's me, OA star Britt Marling, here to talk to you about the end of this show.
That's great. Okay, so... there's something I want to ask you based on that, but I'm afraid of, for the last 4 episodes, pointing you down like a particular path. So I'm not going to do it. We'll just reflect when we get to the end of the season. Okay, so when she's in the plane, she does go up to a woman with short blonde hair. So are you saying that you're assuming that is Britt Marling?
Yeah, I think that's Britt Marling that's turning around there.
Okay, interesting. So we'll move on then, away from Old Night. Sorry, Old Night. We'll close the book on you.
Yep. Well, for a second.
Just for a second.
And then we'll crank that book back open again.
Yeah. So we have Homer talking to Scott.
Yes.
Now, Homer tells a story about how him and Hap met, and Hap came to his university basically, and Dr. Percy found him. What do you believe about that? What do you think about that?
To be honest, I don't actually remember that many details of the story he tells in this, because I think I was still furiously taking notes from the syzygy stuff. I don't think Scott has any reason to lie to Homer about this story though. That's my kind of gut feeling with him.
Okay, interesting. I was the reason why I say that is because it's you've kind of proved my point, but actually in a really weird way.
Okay.
In the past, you've been so caught up with theories in your mind that you've missed slight details, which I completely understand, and that I would be the same, to be honest with you. I've just seen these shows a number of times. But basically, the detail was that I thought, and I'm going to admit this, I think Konrad and I are good friends. I think he can not be self-conscious about me thinking he's stupid or anything. So I don't think he's stupid, Konrad. But I thought that you would come out of this scene thinking that when Dr. Percy went to see Homer at his university, that was actually Hap.
Oh wait, no. So it's Homer. I thought. I'm trying to remember. I might be misremembering this scene.
Homer's telling his story. We didn't hear Scott's story.
That's right. Yeah. Okay.
So basically, Dr. Percy went to see Hap.
Yeah, I remember now.
So okay, I'm not even going to ask you the question because I'm not going to give you a chance to get something wrong. It was Dr. Percy, because we saw Hap enter Dr. Percy's body and Homer enter it right next to it. So we know that before they were in the bodies, they were already together.
Yeah.
So
there was no opportunity for him to. Yeah.
But that's a classic Konrad being caught up in theories and missing
that would have got me. That would have almost certainly got me if I hadn't have been just like dealing with the information dump that had happened mere seconds before.
Yeah, you were reeling from the Old Night stuff. So we didn't actually find out anything about Scott's thing here at all. We only found out about Homer's story about how him and Dr. Percy.
There's some weird stuff in this though with Scott. He obviously, like, Scott talks about, the moths getting distracted by artificial light as the kind of like metaphor for Homer spectacularly missing the point. But Homer's recording this on a dictaphone, and I don't understand why. What is he doing?
because Hap wants to hear it. I'd imagine.
But why? Like, what is up with why is it so? I don't understand why what Scott's saying is important enough to merit recording.
Aha.
There's something going on here.
It's linked to it actually. I'm going to be honest with you. What's going on here is linked to what I wanted to say about something that happened in this episode, but I'm not going to say it.
The things
so we're gonna have a great chat after we finish this series, Konrad.
There was one other thing I wanted to mention, just because it confused me and maybe I misunderstood something. In fact, there's two things. First off, Hap and Elodie talking at the opera. As someone who's been to many operas, that is outrageous. Don't do it. I was furious about that. Second of all, when Kareem comes and saves Prairie, and we'll get to the final scene in a second, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. She says that he killed Old Knight.
Yeah, like he I think to get him off her neck, he cut one of his huge tentacles, which you can imagine is going to bleed a lot.
I felt like they didn't show that, or I just completely missed it. It
showed the tentacle on the floor.
Oh, did it? Okay, maybe I missed that when I was taking notes, because I was like, I went back through it and they show her getting strangled and then him running in, and then they just show him picking her up and carrying her off. And there was obviously a cutaway that I missed there. I'm
gonna be honest. Prairie didn't take Old Knight's pulse. Like that's
yeah. Someone get a vet. Like
the amount of time that passed between him cutting off the tentacle and her saying that, I was like, "There's no chance the blood's gone. Like, there's no chance he's bled out yet."
Yeah, or it'd be a marine biologist actually. But I mean, they are in San Francisco, so there's a good chance. Like, if they can get one there quick enough. But
and he's a marine biologist. He's actually died of a broken heart. So the last scene. The last scene is Kareem and Prairie at the door.
Yeah,
they find the door. I love the design of the door. Looks like the tunnel. Like
it's great. It's a really really cool sort of prismatic effect on the door.
Yeah, exactly. So they go through the door. Anything else to say about this?
Just a lovely bit of dialogue. Just you're tougher than you look. You're kinder than you seem. And then through the door. It's completely black, and the door slams shut behind them, and down the rabbit hole we go.
I think we just have to get into the roundup.
Yeah, let's do it.
I'm sure you could agree, Konrad. The IMDb rating for this episode is very deserved. I'm front loading this for you, Konrad. It's the highest rated episode so far. It's 9 out of 10.
Yeah, I think that's about right. I think that this episode had no fat on it at all. It was just, there was, you start with a great kind of jailbreak between two actors with great charisma and natural chemistry, and you end with an insane reveal, an information dump that basically blows the whole show wide open.
Yeah.
That's how you do like a middle of the season peak, and they did it perfectly.
Yep, I agree. Right, okay, before we get into the questions then, do you have any theories you haven't mentioned yet?
I think we've got pretty much all of them. To be honest, most of the theories I got out of this, with the exception of the one that like the Brit Marling one that I've just mentioned, most of them I think are, stuff like Kareem is Owe's brother and Kareem is Katoon is both their mothers. It's stuff that we've talked about. So yeah, not too much apart from that. They were big theories, but limited in number.
I've got a question for you, Konrad.
Okay.
And I've literally just thought about it in my own mind.
Oh, God. Off the hip.
If your Brit Marling theory is correct...
Yes.
Right? What the hell does that mean in terms of the timeline splits? Because we've been told that the dimensions, like the version of the multiverse within this show, is that whenever things go differently, the timeline splits.
Mm-hmm.
Is the show, if you're right, is the show saying that Brit Marling was once a little girl called Nina in Russia? Or is the timeline split for that world happening prior to her actually being plopped in her body?
I think the timeline split is happening at the conception of someone in her family tree. So I've got no way of backing this up, but I bet if you look back through Brit Marling, based on what she's written in this show, it would not surprise me at all if you went back through Brit Marling's family tree, there was someone who lived in Russia at some point, and she has envisaged a split in a timeline for that person that could have enabled her to be born to a Russian family and grow up in Russia as Nina. So I think Prairie is kind of right in that the first split that she can envisage is the NDE, where she crashes in the bus in Russia, but she's wrong in assuming that the splits for her entire existence begin with her existence. Like there were things happening before she was ever born that set her path in motion, or set her down her path.
Okay, very interesting. Right, you want to get into a couple of questions then?
Yeah, let's do it.
A stranger from the outside.
Okay, so we're only going to do 1 or 2 questions this week because we have run very long on this. So, first question is going to come from Donnie. Donnie says, he says, okay, so I have a few. Did you predict an S&M loving space octopus or whatever the fuck Old Knight was?
So I didn't really. I can't really charitably say I predicted like the kind of Eyes Wide Shut S&M club mixed with psychic space octopus. We'll get it. We'll have to get into that in the Matrix episode to see where we land on it when the dust has settled. Because yes, I have mentioned the word octopus a few times, but it wasn't in this kind of context. So I don't think there's a person alive who predicted that scene. Frankly, if anyone says they predicted that, they're a goddamn liar. Frankly, it was nuts.
Okay, all right, so the next question from Donnie is quite long, so I'm just going to go through the whole thing, and then you can answer at the very end. There is a question at the end. He says, lol, but seriously, I figure with a lot of focus on what we might kind of, on that, we might kind of lose track of Homer's arc. It seems pretty safe to assume that Hap will end up betraying his new friend. I'm assuming he means Elodie. But what do you think about Homer? He seems to be coming to terms with how lonely and miserable he is with his life. But will that lead to him believing the dancers' story and beginning to help them? The dancers, I imagine that means the 5 who were in Hap's basement, beginning to help them, or will he double down on his commitment to? Okay, I have to read this whole thing again to give Donnie the credit of this turn of phrase.
Okay.
He seems to be doubling down. He seems to be coming to terms with how lonely and miserable he is in his life. But will that lead to him believing the dancer's story and beginning to help them, or will he double down on his commitment to bearded anonymity? Will he realize he's been the prime dimension Homer all this time? Or will he dig up that guy in the secret room in Hap's basement?
He's got to. Like I of all the things that I think they have to resolve this season, Homer waking up has to be number 1 with a bullet. I just think he's the reason Prairie's here, and If what we've talked about previously with them planning on doing 5 seasons initially, which presumably is across 5 different dimensions, would have been the plot structure, I don't see any way that they could have written this with characters presumably moving on from this dimension at the end of this series without resolving Homer's personality crisis. So I think he's got to wake up, and I'd like of all the kind of narrative arcs that's easiest to resolve, that's the top one as well. Like that's definitely within their reach, and I could see them reaching a conclusion by the end of this season, and I hope they do.
There's already been some building there, I think.
Yeah.
Also, I will say that Donnie sort of alluded to the idea that does he realize he's Prime Dimension Homer this whole time? I think based on our discussions in this episode, we don't think he is. We think that Prime Dimension Homer is in there, but the guy who's at the surface is actually Dr. Roberts.
Yeah, like he's. I think it's a case of will, and like I think the Dr. Roberts is experiencing kind of like a crisis of personality and doesn't understand why, because he's fighting this version of Homer that's inside of himself that he doesn't really know is there. So it'll do everyone some good if Homer can get out of there or surface and then move on and leave Dr. Roberts to his bearded anonymity, as you say.
Yeah. Okay, last. I'm gonna go. Sorry, the guys I was unable to get to, but I'm gonna go to Helen O'Grady for the last one.
Okay.
She says, "Wow, there was a lot to unpack in there. I can't
Yeah, there
believe."
was.
Yeah, yeah. I can't believe your joke about Lovecraftian squid monsters came through, Konrad.
Yeah. That was a shoot from the hip kind of theory, that one, and it somehow...
I will say there was a lot of comments, like spoiler tag, that you wouldn't have seen, which were like, did he just say that there was octopus?
Yeah, that was a fire from the hip kind of theory that somehow kind of came true, but we'll have that conversation at the end of the season to see where we land on it.
Yeah. Okay. So Azrael, Angel of Death, tells her that her brother has been sent to every dimension to protect her. Is that this Kareem? Oh, by the way, I must say, I'm pretty sure Helen is a Konrad. Oh no, I think Helen.
I think Helen's been posting theories, so I think Helen.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure. There's at least one or two people who tried to be Konrads and then eventually just binge the rest.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if Helen. Let us know, Helen. Are you one of those people? Been sent to every dimension to protect her. Is this Kareem? I think we've agreed that is. Yeah. It seems so as if he saved her life straight after. Yep. So because obviously Old Knight said it depends if he saves you or not. That's whether you'll die or not. How do you think it was in the original? Who do you think it was in the original dimension? Homer, or was it Riz Ahmed's character? I'm not sure why, but I have a feeling that they're a parallel. Him and Kareem. So interesting. Before I even get to the questions, Helen has done the same thing I did. I assumed that the brother doesn't have the same look.
Yeah. I think, and I think that's the right way to think of it. I think having had that conversation with you now, I think getting hung up on the physical appearance thing is probably a little bit foolish in a show about kind of interdimensional travelers hopping into other people's bodies, to think that you can only hop into your own body. So yeah, I think Ilias is a good shout for her brother in the Crestwood dimension.
Okay, awesome. 2 questions then from Helen. First one, where/who do you think Homer is? Let's just get that on paper now. What do we think's going on with Homer? I'm pretty sure we think they're both in there somewhere, but let us know.
Yeah, so they're both in there, and Homer is starting to come out, though only in kind of dribs and drabs. By who? Do you take that to mean, like, as in who was he originally before he started traveling? You know, what is the significance? Of his origin?
Well, we've had an Azrael now. We've got a brother and a sister. We've had like Elodie, who you were mentioning, maybe Katoon. Who knows? Do you think Homer is someone more important, or is he just like this?
Well, that's interesting actually, because Kareem isn't aware that he is her brother. He isn't aware of the significance of his part in all this. So why not the other 5 as well? And maybe they're angels too. If OA is the original angel, then that means Kareem/Ilias are also angels. I mean, maybe he's Tyrael. I don't know if that's a real one or just a Diablo one, to be honest. Which one's Gabriel? Yeah. But yeah, I think that's actually a really interesting point. I think there's no reason why the rest of them can't be angels that are kind of subconsciously following a path.
Okay, last question from Helen. I'm gonna ask here is what does Hap think he can learn from Scott's NDE?
I think Scott's NDE. I'm gonna fire from the hip with this one again. I've kind of said it's previously in this episode. I said I think it was going to be something to do with traveling without the movements. I think I'm going to roll that back. I don't think it is going to be that. I think Scott mentioned meeting someone who matches Elodie's description in his NDE. That's what I'm going to say, and they're going to get a kind of recollection of it maybe to see if it fits.
Okay, very interesting. That's great. Okay, so last thing I wanted to mention before we go for the week is while I'm looking at YouTube right now, looking at these questions, I can see in a suggested video, a video by a channel called Think Story, which obviously I don't want you to look up, Konrad, but because it's the OA Season 2 ending explained. Okay. And I just want to say this. That video has 560,000 views. Why was this show cancelled? You know?
I can't see a reason for this show to have been cancelled. Honestly, I know I was kind of hot and cold on the first season, and I can understand why other people were. But by the time you're watching the second season, like every episode is a banger in this. I don't understand why it was cancelled at all. It's phenomenal. And
I personally think that, you know how like they Arrested Development was, they brought it back on Netflix. I think eventually
10 years too late.
I really hope that that Britt and Zal are up for it when it does come around. But I think eventually it's going to get to the point where it's going to be like announcing season 3 of the OA. If they went, actually, yeah, we will let you make it. If they let them do it, I think that it would have the same media buzz that a new show would have anyway.
Yeah, I think
so.
Come back. And you know, when was this? When did this season air? Was it 2018?
2019.
2019. So it's not that long ago. I don't get it. Like, the production values are great, but it can't have been that high budget. I mean, you've got Kingsley Ben-Adir, who's really, and Jason Isaacs, I guess, are really the only kind of like big name actors in it. So there can't be that much money spent on the cast.
Zendaya.
And Zendaya. Yeah, Zendaya would cost a lot now, actually, to be fair, to get Zendaya back. But it just infuriates me to like like find a show where, like, at first I was like, okay, this is okay, and then the second season is just like, oh, this is really good, this is really going places and really compelling, and then to know that at the end of it there's just going to be nothing because some goddamn suit made it a financial decision rather than an artistic one.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, there we go, guys. Thanks very much for joining us. If you would like to see more, subscribe to the Culture Cave. I'm sure you already have if you're sitting at this point. We're about an hour and 50 into the episode. But thanks very much for joining us. Make sure you give a like to the video. I know it's a bit cliched to ask for likes, but it does really help the video. It helps with the algorithms and all that sort of stuff. Thanks very much for watching. Make sure that you check us out next week. Next Monday we'll be coming out. This Wednesday we've got a Sisyphus episode coming out. You haven't started watching Sisyphus yet. What are you doing with your life?
I almost started watching that, actually. But then I was like, you know what? I'll leave it just in case.
I know Emmett and I are going through it on the channel right now. I know we are. But the thing is, I've actually thought to myself, could we do it on the After Dark podcast? Even though I'm doing it on the channel already. I thought to myself, well, the After Dark podcast is a long-term project for us, so in 2 years' time, maybe we'll do it, because it's only 16 episodes and it's only going to be one season. It fits all the criteria for this. It is a little bit more silly in terms of the tone at times, but there's a lot of theory potential.
Yeah,
so it is something for the future.
I've avoided it thus far because I have to do that now with television shows. Just like, this would be fun to watch, but I can't watch it because it might be something we cover in After Dark.
Which, to be honest with you, Konrad, it does sound terrible, but Konrad is more of a film watcher anyway, so he doesn't mind too much, I would imagine. Yeah. Alright, guys, well, thank you very much for watching. Email us at adpodmail if you want to. Comment for Konrad underneath if you want to ask a question. T-shirt link in the description, Discord link in the description. Thanks very much for watching. Goodbye.
Thank you for listening. The After Dark podcast has been a Culture Cave production. Please subscribe on audio apps as well as on YouTube at The Culture Cave. Join us next week as Konrad journeys further into the unknown.